Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers, but we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers, but we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And welcome, everybody, to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. I know what you're thinking. Wow, it's my favorite host in the world, and you're exactly right. It is. It's Andrew Cooperrider hosting today, and I've got a show planned for you. We'll be discussing a lot about state politics, of course, just something that I do from time to time. By time to time, I mean every time I'm on, I typically talk about state politics. And today, I want to really cover shifty politicians. And you may be thinking, Andrew, come on. Politicians are the most honest people in the world. They would never lie to us. And it's always interesting how they go out of their way in order to somehow justify a action that they're otherwise being called out for. And so we'll make sure to discuss that, because we've got a bill filed, of course, and I believe I mentioned before, if you haven't heard about it before, I'm surprised nobody else has talked about it, or you haven't heard about it. If you haven't heard about it, you should be following the Andrew Cooperrider Show right here on WGTK, Sundays at 6, on WBNA, Wednesdays at 11. But the gas tax bills filed to raise our gas tax, House Bill 370, raises it 38% in 2 years. And the sponsor of such has been ridiculed correctly for being such a jerk, because he is a Republican. And so he's been called out, and he's trying to issue a defense. So we'll go over exactly what his defense is and how he's, at best, misguided. At worst, he's a downright rotten liar. Based upon his criminal history, I'm going to go with downright rotten liar. And also, we have Bashir, speaking of politicians up to no good. Bashir's over at the World Economic Forum in Davos, not before he took a little jaunt through Europe again on your dime. We'll go over exactly what he's up to, how his justifications for such extravagant trips as being economic development trips just falls flat when you start looking at the facts behind his last couple of trips. Also, we got, we'll probably talk about drag shows. I know we're all big fans. Not really. We hate them. But there is a drag show being targeted towards kids, specifically with kids pricing on it. That's how disgusting these people are. We'll talk about why is that even still legal. And then finally, we'll discuss assuming we have time, the Kentucky Public Pension Authority getting 25% salary increases over the course of a year, while pension recipients haven't received anything like a cost of living adjustment since 2011. And it leads to the question of why do they need such huge raises? Who's the raises going to? So we'll be discussing all that and more today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. If you want to join into the conversation, text 502 I'm on Kentucky's Voice. 50. The Andrew Cooperrider Show is my other weekly show that is amazing and you should listen to, as I plugged earlier. Anyways, if you want to join into the conversation, you can text 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. As always, I take your text in that last segment there, and I'll go through them and respond to your messages and let you know if I agree with you, if you're right, if you're wrong, answer any questions you have. And you're going to want to join in this conversation because obviously it has to do with things going on right in your own backyard. So once again, that text, 502-571-0970. It's the Kentucky Voice text line. A chance for you to, well, let your opinions ring, hear them live on air. But I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. If you like what you're hearing here, you want to check out the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Not only can you listen to it here, but you can also visit theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. See all the different places where you can listen to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Very excited. But we'll be discussing about this gas tax politician when we get back, being a down good, rotten liar. So we'll have that here in just a few short minutes.
Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
So I want to tell you a story about a Republican named Tom Smith, who served in the Kentucky House of Representatives for the 86th District, and then was convicted in the 1990s during his first stint in office. He was convicted in federal court, March of 93, of 2 counts of extortion. The charges stemmed from him accepting $10,000 from a wife of a convicted drug dealer in exchange for promises to help secure parole or lenient treatment for her husband. And he ended up resigning his seat in 93, was sentenced to 27 months in federal prison. And he was convicted. His sentence was upheld on appeal. And then the governor... I believe one of the governors, granted him, they didn't pardon him, but they restored his voting rights. And in Kentucky, even if you are a convicted felon who's not legally able to own a gun, you can still hold office if you have had your voting rights restored. And naturally, because we as just voters hate ourselves, this guy was elected again in 2020. You literally have somebody who was convicted of accepting bribes, essentially extorting people in his role as an official government official. And we hate ourselves so much. We're like, you know what? Let's elect this guy again. I mean, he served his time, 27 months. Surely he's learned his lesson by now. If anything, he's probably less likely to misuse his office or commit corruption because he's been caught and has been punished before. And we all know people who have committed corruption priorly and get convicted of it are so far less likely to go ahead and commit, a crime again. I mean, the stats bear that out. Of course they don't. But anyways, so we hate ourselves. So he was elected again to the state house rep. And in 2020, so this year, while he's in the headlines, what I'm talking about him though, is because this guy decided it would be just a grand idea to go ahead and file a gas tax increase this year that would increase your gas taxes 38% over 2 years. So the way it works right now is, for those of you unaware, is that your gas tax is calculated as a percentage of the wholesale gas price. Right now it's 9%. And so 9% of the wholesale gas price gets tacked onto what you pay at the pump. So you're already paying it at the pump. You see it in like the amount you pay at the pump. And right now that's about 25 cents. Well, for a long time, all the the transportation cabinet and the people who like taxing you a lot more have said, well, look, the road fund, so all that money goes to the road fund that's supposed to be spent on the roads. The road fund has no money because gas prices have remained lower, especially during Trump's administration. It's not keeping up with inflation. So we don't have enough money for the roads. Now, any halfway decent, intelligent, tax-paying citizen says, hold on a second, like half my paycheck is going to taxes. Why do you need, okay, so you got a road fund that's only funded by the gas tax. I hear you. But why is that the only money you can use for the roads? Can't you use some of the other thousands of dollars a year? I mean, if you add up how much the federal government, state government, and local government spent backing out, of course, federal funds, because the federal government in large part just takes that money, then redistributes it. So if we look at what the federal government spends, and then we look at what the state government spends minus federal dollars, and then what the local government spend minus state and federal dollars, you end up getting a number of $26,000 a year per every man, woman, and child in this country. 26 grand a year, over $100,000 a family of four is what the government is spending. It's massive. But to old Tom, he's like, look, I've been convicted of illegal extortion. Let's try legal extortion and go ahead and just make you pay more at the pump. And so what he does is he wants this to shift over to a set amount of tax cents per gallon. And he wants to, of course, increase it right off the bat. And so initially, he wants to increase it from the 25 cents up to about 30 cents a gallon. So about a 5-cent increase, 29.6 cents to be exact. So that's an 18.4% increase, 5 cents about increase from where we're at now. And then the following year, this would be fiscal year 27 to 28, he would increase it to 34.6 cents per gallon. So that's a 38.4% increase over the course of 2 years. I think we're taxed enough. I think we can get money from somewhere else. Tom disagrees. And so Tom's taken to social media to go ahead and defend his ridiculous action. And he's done it with some really interesting math. So here you go. So I went through the math, right? So this is his top defense. So he made this big, long post excusing the fact that he's a communist. And so his first reasoning behind this was this bill will add 5 cents the first year to a gallon of gas. Which we agree. That's the numbers I laid out. He's not disagreeing with my numbers. But where he's trying to hide the percentage is instead of using the gas tax as its own standalone, he's decided to use the entire cost per gallon. So he says that if gas is $2.50 a gallon, it would go to $2.55 a gallon. That is a 2% increase. And then it would go to $2.60 the next year, which is a 1.9% increase. First off, buddy, you have to add those two together. So if it went from $2.50 to $2.60, that's a 10 cents increase. Not, but he's using 1.9. He's trying to even hide that. But anyways, so instead of looking at the portion of the gas that is the gas tax, he's decided to excuse his behavior by saying, look, let's put this in perspective. It's only 2% increase on your cost per gallon. And that's not a lot of money. I mean, what is another 5 cents a gallon? What's another 10 cents a gallon? Yeah, sure. Is it $2 every time you fill up? Yeah. Does that mean a family of two buying cars with 2 cars is going to spend probably $200 to $300 more a year on this gas tax? Yeah, but come on, you got it. You got the money. I know apparently Tom Smith thinks we're big old money bags over here, and we wouldn't miss having $200 to $300 out of our accounts. And of course, his justification is, as I just said, well, the road fund needs more money because where else do we get money for the road fund? Here's a grand idea. KSP gets around $50-60 million out of the road fund a year. How about you get that from somewhere else? Grand idea. The runways, aviation, gets sometimes $1 million, sometimes a couple million out of that road fund a year to pave aviation runways. How about you get that money somewhere else, Tom? Also, let's not ignore the fact that the debt servicing, because this is the other interesting thing that our government does that just so upsets me. So we passed a balanced budget amendment in the state. That means that anytime we spend money, we have to appropriate that money. The state can't go into debt. That's what it's supposed to say. However, there's been an interesting interpretation of that rule that that allows individual funds to go into debt. So if you look at the road fund from this past year and you look at the breakdown of money, what you will see is that, let's give me the exact number here, is that a large chunk of the money is going to servicing debt that they've taken out, servicing bonds. So we've got about 125-ish million going to servicing debt. We're not supposed to go into debt, I thought. We had a balanced budget amendment. Well, no, see, that just applies to like the general fund. But when we have something like, the gas tax that goes into the road fund, well, that fund is allowed to go into debt. You see, this is the game they play. Every fund to them is a different fund. Well, this is the gas fund. This is the general fund. This is the Sikh fund. This is the tobacco settlement fund. This is the fund from the penguins that we've taxed down in Antarctica. Whatever. To them, it's always a different fund. But it's all coming from the same place at the end of the day, our pockets. And they have no problem spending somebody else's money. And speaking of politicians, they have no problem spending somebody else's money. Bashir's on another jaunt through Europe. This is his third trip to Europe over the last year. And a big defense of this is that, well, it's to go ahead and get economic development. It's super important. Economic development. Yes, we're already giving out over $200,000 in subsidies per job we create in Kentucky. Sure. But you know what? That's not enough to close the deal. You know what we need to close the deal? We need to send Andy Bashir and all his pasty glory over there to go ahead and really close them down. We all know when we're sitting around in rooms and we're trying like at my companies or anything else and we're talking about sales, we're like, you know what we need? We need Andy Bashir. We need the closer in here, okay? We need the guy who's going to get it sold in here. Well, Andy Bashir's over in Europe, but we'll take a look at these claims that he's there for economic development and that it's really going to help out Kentucky by taking a look at the track record that came off his last trips. Because as of right now, in the past year, he's had about $200,000 spent on vacations in Europe on taxpayer dime. So we'll be talking about that when we come back here in a few short minutes.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And you're back here on Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host, Andrew Cooperrider. If you want to join in to the wonderful conversation, send in your text in the final segment. I will go through them, respond to them. So that phone number for you, once again, is 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. Well, while we're here in Louisville, our illustrious and, of course, wonderful governor, everybody knows I'm a big fan. I'm a huge fan. Love the guy. He's over. I don't. For those of you who didn't catch the sarcasm, he's over in Europe on the taxpayers' dime again. This time he's visiting Davos for the World Economic Forum. He did this last year, and then between that, he went ahead and he took a trip to the UK, at one point Ireland. So far, he spent $80-some thousand the last time he went to Davos of taxpayer funds, not out of his salary, but literally from the budget of this state. The economic development budget is paying for this travel. Spent $80,000 him flying over to Davos, and then he spent $44,000 flying around UK and Ireland, and then he's back in Davos. I'm going to assume that's another $80-ish thousand or so that he spent in here. So that's, for those of you not keep dragging home, that's $200,000 in taxpayer funds on Bashir family vacations. And I say family vacations because, it'd be one thing to go there and claim economic development. And not to get off that family vacation point, but hold on a sec. I got to say this. It'd be one thing to say it's for economic development. But if you're going to claim that, you should at least be bringing the bacon home. Now, the last time he went to UK, he went to Ireland and made a big announcement about Tate, building jobs in Kentucky, bringing 400 jobs to Kentucky, making it seem like he traveled over there, and they called in the closer. They called in the heavy hitter. They called in Andy Bashir, and he walked in the door, and he slapped his hand down, and he said, what do we got to do to get this job done, to get this contract signed? Let's get it signed, because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to bring home the bacon. They made it seem like that's what happened, but if you look at the actual records on this, the Tate economic incentive package was approved by the state well before he left for the UK. In fact, 2 weeks before he went to the UK, the local county fiscal court and city councils for where Tate was going to put these 400 jobs were already voting and have approved the incentive package for Tate to take these jobs. So I don't think, call me crazy, but I don't think Andy Bashir heading on over to the UK was, what closed the deal. I think it's the over $200,000 per job created we're offering in subsidies at just the state level. That's before we figure in whatever the local level has offered these people. So it's probably a lot more. But let's just stick with the $208,000. So we offer them $208,000 in subsidies, and they're like, I'd love to take the deal, but unless I meet with Andy Bashir personally in my home in Ireland, no deal. No deal. That's not what's happening. These deals are approved before he even goes. They've been hashed out. They've been negotiated. I don't remember everybody else traveling to Ireland to make these deals work. Hello, there's Zoom. Hello, they typically fly their one guy in where they want to do the business. So it's enough that the whole economic development claims completely fall on their face. Now, I don't know how you feel about spending $100,000 on vacations, but I got a problem with it. You can text in your feelings, 502-571-0970. Once again, join into the conversation, send your text, 502-571-0970. So it's not enough that he's lying when he says it's for economic development. What he does to really just put some salt in the wound is he insists on taking family photos while he's on these vacations. Last time he was in I believe the UK, he flew his kids over with him to go ahead. Now, maybe he paid for his kids' flights, but there's somebody whose flight, and of course, per diem too. He's getting like hundreds of dollars a day in per diem when he travels. There's somebody else getting per diem. There's somebody else getting those flights. There's somebody else who's getting those hotels paid for. And that's Annie Bashir's wife. And he's nice enough to share photos with us. Here's a photo that he took in Helsinki, Finland, with his wife in front of some landmark. And it's just, it's so nice for him. If you're going to go ahead and take a vacation on our dollars, at least you could do is share some photos with us, right? I mean, but it's also just the sheer, his inability to see how these things look is always so mind-blowing to me. Do you not realize how it looks when you're over somewhere on taxpayer dime and you take family photos while you're on vacation and we're paying for it? While the rest of us can't afford those kinds of vacations and you're taking photos of it saying, well, you paid for mine. Sucker. We got you. And it's not only the vacations he does. Here's another example. He made a post on social media. This was a few years ago, where he thanked Gray Construction for building the Blue Oval plant. He said, thank you to Gray Construction for being a partner in all these building projects and the Blue Oval project, which is billions of dollars, and we thank you for it. Jim Gray, whose family owns Gray Construction, is the transportation secretary of the state. He literally doesn't care. He doesn't care how these things look. He's like, does it look bad that billions of dollars of construction being subsidized by both the federal and state government is being completed by my transportation secretary's company? No, that doesn't look bad. That's something we could definitely share out. It drives me crazy. And then the people stepping in line to defend this. One of the biggest defenses that I see all the time of this is that, well, Trump does it. Why can't Bashir? How much millions have we spent Trump vacationing in Mar-a-Lago? Mar-a-Lago's Trump's house. He's traveling home on the weekends, the same way Joe Biden traveled to Delaware on the weekends. He's leaving his job for the week and going home to Mar-a-Lago for the weekend. His house. Also, last I checked, Trump engages in something called foreign policy. Trump establishes the country's relationships with other countries. That's something the president does. You know what's something that the governor doesn't do? The governor doesn't engage, is not supposed to be engaging in diplomacy overseas. He's not supposed to, he can't deploy the National Guard into Europe if he decides that they're a problem. He's not engaging in that. The only reason any state person has of going overseas is always, well, it's for economic development, to bring jobs home. Wouldn't the people bringing these jobs rather see where they're bringing the jobs to? Wouldn't you rather bring them around your state and say, look, here's where you'd build your building. Look, here's some great employees for you. Let me take you to a training facility that could train your staff. If you're going to offer those incentives. I find it particularly ridiculous, but maybe you agree with it, maybe you disagree, but you can join into the conversation. 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. Once again, 502-571-0970. Coming up after this, stay with us here. We're going on a short little break here, but stay with us because we'll be talking about drag shows for kids. I know everybody's real excited about that. I know that is at the top of the line. That's what I want to talk about. I love talking about grown men cross-dressing in front of children. That is at the top of my list. So we'll have that when we get back. If you like what you're hearing, you can check out the Andrew Cooper Writer Show, my other once weekly show. You can check that out by visiting theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. But we'll be back in a few short minutes discussing drag shows.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio online at kyvoice.org.
And you're back here on Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooper-Ryder. This segment here, we're talking about drag shows for kids. Why is it still legal? I don't know. Maybe you have opinions. You want to send us a text? Go ahead. 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. Send your text in. I'll be responding to them in the next segment. But here we go. Here's this graphic I came across called about an event called Hot Plates, spelled H-A-W-T. Hot Plates. H-A-W-T plates. And the flyer predominantly shows like 5 drag queens, cross-dressing dudes. One of them has like a full beard. Like, for those of you who can't see it, one of them like is a drag queen, but like has a full beard, which is just weird. That you would want to pretend to be a woman, but want to keep a full beard. It's weird to try to pretend to be a woman in the first place. But what was particularly galling, and you know, people are into weird things sometimes. And if you want to go to some adult venue and watch a drag show that's 18 and up and whatever, I guess that's your prerogative to do so. I mean, we allow a lot of things that are not particularly savory, like strip clubs and other things. But you're crossing a line when you start targeting kids. And this event is specifically targeting kids. So much so, it has a different price point for ages, okay? So here's the price point here for you. So it says $10 to attend this event for over age 11, $5 for ages 5 to 10, and it's free for kids 4 and under. Now, when they sit there and they say this is a family-friendly, all ages welcome, it says at the bottom, family-friendly, all ages welcome drag show. There's literally no such thing. Drag is a sexual performance, period. That's what it is. The people doing it get enjoyment out of cross-dressing. They get sexual enjoyment out of it. They're weirdos. They're freaks. That's what they enjoy. And they get especially excited when they do it for kids. And you know it gets exciting for them when they do it for kids? Because when's the last time we ever saw a flyer that said, drag show for seniors being held at your local senior center, free over 55, free over 65. Come on in. Watch something that disgusts you. No, they're targeting kids because the kids' minds can be easily confused. And if they push it upon, because here's the deal. We all grew up without this being okay. We grew up accepting the fact that drag shows are sexual performances. No matter what all these people say, you know, they try to gaslight us into staying quiet and telling us these aren't sexual at all. You're the one making it sexual. No, they're sexual. It's in like 2012, the University of Chicago did a deep study into drag queens and found that there was a sexual side of it for every single one of them. That's why they do it. Intensive study. This was before they realized, like, new game plan, target the kids. And because these drag performers, they want to make more money, and they can't make enough money just, with the relying on adults right now. And so what they have to do is go ahead and, go out into the kids and convert them into future followers of them. Because if they don't, well, then, drag might go away, or it might be forced back into the corner with, where it should be, in strip clubs or somewhere else where it's adults only. And not only is this continue to be legal in Kentucky, and there should be extreme limitations on this. The legislature has failed. State Senator Lindsey Tishner has proposed a bill every single year to make these kinds of things illegal, make drag shows illegal for kids, and make it illegal to be done with public funds. And every year it doesn't get across the finish line. And it makes you wonder why. Because when it comes to taxpayer funds, this is a real contract that was really issued in Kentucky in 22 and 23. And that was the governor spent over $1 million issuing contracts to LGBTQ groups like, like LGBTQ Kentuckiana or whatever, the local one here in Louisville. They got like $700,000 for this to put on what they called edutainment drag shows to push vaccines. This was a contract issued in 2022 into 2023 that gave hundreds of thousands of dollars each to 3 different LGBTQ groups to put on a drag shows in order to push vaccines. And we can't get that illegal in the state? We can't pass a law saying, hey, you know what? Our tax dollars shouldn't fund it, and it's not for kids. It's funny, too, because all the people here sit there and say, oh, it's not sexual whatever. You're crazy. You just want to, one of the comments is, oh, parents should be allowed to choose. I'm sorry, do we let parents choose to, if kids can go in a strip club? When a 7-year-old's sitting there handing dollar bills to a stripper on a pole, is it like, nah, it's okay, the parents said it was fine? Is that what we're really arguing? No, this isn't a parental control issue. It's a disagreement over the fact that this thing that we all accepted as sexual literally 5 seconds ago, they're now trying to redefine as not sexually confusing and not sexual to kids. One of the other common comments on this is, oh, I trust my kid more at a drag show than I would, at church. It's funny when they mention that because, one, if you actually, it's really hard to find the data because they're not breaking it down by drag performers that, sexualize kids. But first off, if you define drag shows as a sexual performance, as exposing children to a sexual performance, every single drag performer that performs in front of a child is committing a inappropriate sexual act with a child. So just because you redefine the term doesn't change what they're doing. So no, every single one of them is a sexual predator. So you can't even begin to compare it to churches. But also, even if you don't accept that, the data on like transgender, gay, LGBTQ groups and sexual exploitation of children, well, it's hard to come by. There has been a few studies done on it. A few people have looked into it, and it is not low. It is not low. It's nowhere near what preachers are. And it's funny, too, because they always bring up, oh, well, preachers and sexually molesting kids. You know what they never bring up? They never bring up public schools. Did you know 1 in 10 public school children will have an inappropriate sexual experience with a teacher by the time they graduate high school? 1 in 10. A study done by the Federal Department of Education in the later 2000s found that the prevalence of sexual exploitation of minors by schools, by teachers, was 10 times the incident rate of the big giant Catholic church priest scandal. 10 times the rate. But they never bring that up. It's almost like they actually don't care about children being sexually exploited. They just love to partake in it. You'd send in your thoughts, 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. A few other issues I think might be worth discussing. I know we talked, there's been a lot of talk about the driver's licensing nightmare. And a big thing getting in the way of this is apparently the circuit clerk lobby. And this is something I still don't understand. I've tried to figure it out. I mean, the amount of people that work at the circuit clerk's office and are circuit clerks is like 1,500 in the state. That's a rounding error when it comes to votes. Like, that's like not a huge voter base. Yet the reason why we can't fix our system and return it back locally is stated that, well, the circuit clerks don't like it. Well, who cares if they like it or not? They're elected people being paid in many circumstances well over $100,000 a year. I don't care if you don't. Yes, obviously, if you come to me and say, hey, you're going to get paid the same amount, but you're going to do more work, I'm going to be like, pass. Of course, I'm not going to sign up for that. Of course, they're going to fight it. But why do the legislators care about the circuit clerk lobby? How many of you even know what the circuit clerk does in the legislators? Because this is the thing. A lot of people think, well, legislators, they're really smart, super intelligent, they're super well informed. No, they're not. They're idiots. Most of them are idiots. I'm telling you, talk to them. Most of them are in office because they won a special election, which means they were friendly enough with 40 some odd people, and probably, the leadership in the legislature came in and said, we want that guy elected. Or they won like a non-contested primary, was their first win, and they're in a Republican area. They're not special or particularly good at anything. In fact, the dumber they are, the more leadership likes them because they're easier to control. Most of them are just up there to get the claps and honorifics. But it's still, there's things that just make no common sense. Like the circuit clerk's office having all this control that licensing won't happen. When we get back, I'll be responding to your text. Send them on in 502-571-0970. Once again, that number, 502-571-0970. We get back, we'll respond to the texts, and we'll talk about one department in the state getting a 25% raise. It's a lot of money. We'll be back in a few short minutes. Continue here on Kentucky's Voice.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
talk about the KPPA. That's the Kentucky Public Pension Authority. And I noticed something interesting on their budget summaries recently that I felt was worth mentioning. So when we look back at, let's see, in 2023, they had 261 employees, and the total salary was $16.4 million. So the staff average is about 63,000. In 2025, two years later, they still had 261 employees. And now the salary amount was $20.5 million. That is a $4 million jump. That is a 25% jump. It went from 63K on average to 78K per average in just 2 years. Now, I have a feeling that didn't go to, the frontline, run-of-the-mill employees that are doing benefits counseling. I have a feeling it went to the top brass. I have a feeling that the people higher up, because I got some comments from, when I posted about it, I got some comments from Kentucky Public Pension Authority employees saying that, well, I didn't get that big of a raise. I got like 3%, the same as all the other state employees got. And there's a few of them that said that, which would mean that the top brass saw massive increases in their salaries because they didn't add people. If they'd added people, at least you could claim that. And what's kind of galling about this is that, the pension recipients haven't gotten a cost of living adjustment since like 2011. So while the pension recipients aren't getting cost of living adjustments, the pension managers are getting raises of 25%. Now, a lot of people, when I post about this, will say, well, I disagree with pensions across the board. And a lot of people will disagree with things like Social Security too, a lot of times. And, while I personally agree that just mainly from the operational standpoint, I think pensions are kind of a raw deal, same as Social Security. When you look at what that same amount of money you put in would do on like a normal open market and how much you would get, and then how much you would have to hand off to your people. Because if you look at a lot of times what you pay into Social Security, for an example, over your lifetime, you will have paid in enough money that with interest over the time you've been paying in without receiving benefits, you should have like $1 million, $2 million in there. A lot of people would. And then just simply paying out the interest on that principal would equal more than you're getting from Social Security. And then when you die, you would then have all that principal, several $1 million, to hand on to your kids. And a lot of times you see the same thing with the pensions. When you look at how much you paid in, and then you look at, well, if I just had that principal and I was able to invest it myself, the same thing the pensions are doing, by the way. They're just investing on the stock market for you. You could just do it yourself, and you get to hang on to the principal. Makes a lot of sense. But a lot of people do take issue with it. And I understand that, like the idea of people complaining about pensions when you're like, we're broke. Why do they get a pension? I don't get a pension. I hear you. But remember, that's kind of like the deal that was made, right? Imagine if you're somebody who doesn't understand why I feel that it's bad, it's wrong, especially people nearing retirement, to be yanking their Social Security or to look at pension recipients and say, well, we're doing them a favor. Imagine you working for your private employer had your 401k you're paying into. And you would say they did a 6% match. So you're contributing 6%, they're contributing 6%. So you have 12% of your salary going into this 401k. And then imagine you're planning on that. That's where it's taken care of. You spend all your other money however you want to because my retirement's taken care of. I've got that 12% of my salary a year going into my 401k. I'll have millions there I can draw on once I go to retire. Well, you're not going to put aside money for retirement. And it's the same thing for a lot of people, especially as they're nearing retirement. They're sitting there saying, look, I'm counting on that Social Security. I'm counting on that pension because, one, it's my money. It was the deal made for my labor. And I would take a chunk of my labor off and I'd pay it into this. And then I would get a retirement fund. I would get something out of putting my money here versus me keeping it in my pocket. So it's not even someone else's money. It's their money. It's supposed to be. And then you need a retirement. Somebody's like, you know what? Or we talk about cost of living adjustment. You know, if you had money in the market normally, it's outpacing inflation. So your pension should adjust to keep up with inflation because your money's outpacing inflation in the first place. But a lot of people take issue with that idea and they say, nah, pull the rug on them. And I just think, look, that's not the deal that was made. The problem here, what's led to the pensions in Kentucky being underfunded, is that especially under Daddy Beshear, and of course all the people yelling about their pensions, so concerned about it, the teachers unions and other people, they elected in his son, but it was his dad who broke it because instead of doing his matches, so, you know, going back to the 401k example, you put in 6%, your employer's supposed to put in 6%. That's the same way for the pension system. The employee puts in a certain amount and then the state's supposed to match it. But instead of making the contributions they were supposed to, the market was doing so well at the time that they felt they could get away with not putting money in there, and that freed up billions of dollars for them to spend on other boondoggles that they wanted to spend money on, instead of contributing in what he should have. The problem is when the market tanks, like it did, and you weren't contributing during that entire time, and then also you have to sell off assets to be making the pension payments, it's not a good deal. It leads to the financial issues we're experiencing right now. But as I said, what's particularly galling to me is when the people who are supposed to be managing this fund that isn't 100% funded, they don't have enough money to keep. I mean, the pension system is getting better. The Republican legislators taking steps. It's going to take time to get it back, you know. It's very easy to break something. It's harder to fix it, especially when it's left to rot for a certain amount of time. Because not only did Beshear, Daddy, break it, but then you had a Democrat legislature up until 2017 was the first year where Republicans took over. 2018 was the first budget. Republicans would only have 8 years to try to fix this pension problem. Really. So it's going to take time to fix that because not only, because if you think about it, you missed out not just on the contributions that should have went in 2012 and before 2012, before 08, during Andy Beshear's dad. You missed out on those contributions he should have made. You're also missed out on all the interest that those contributions would have earned from then till now. So it takes longer to make it up. Because you got to match what should have been put in the first place and never was. And you also got to put in money and hope to earn enough interest to fight back against it. But of course, that's something that is difficult. It's hard to fight against. But moving now on to some texts have come in. Let's see what we got here. We got, until we hold financially liable at the personal level, public officials and teachers, no change will happen. Yeah, I mean, that's what they're referencing, I believe, is our first segments where we're talking about Andy Beshear spending money like crazy and House Rep Tom Smith trying to increase our gas tax. And yeah, it's very true. We are incapable. Our legislature's incapable of holding this governor accountable. And it leads to a lot of questions as to why. Somebody asked me yesterday, like, well, if the legislature's, I was speaking at an event yesterday, they said if the legislature's in charge of the budget, why do they allow him to spend this money? It's like, well, you're not understanding how they make the budget. In large part because they're kind of lazy. I'm going to be honest. They kind of take the lazy way out, because the non-lazy way out that takes a lot of work but would really rein in a lot of the spending would be to do zero-based budgeting. Start from zero. Then you say, okay, how much do you need for office supplies? Okay, this is your line item for office supplies. How much do you need for this? This is your line item for that. That is zero-based budgeting. What they do instead is they say, okay, what is your quote-unquote base? How much is your salaries and your other things? Okay, so let's say you need $150 million. So we're just going to give you $150 million and you can spend it however you want. So we'll appropriate $150 million to the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. They can spend that how they want, and then we'll only earmark like 10 projects, another $50 million, let's say, to be spent in a specific way that we want. And then they have to pass a law that says you can't spend money on this, a separate law, like banning taxpayer funding for drag shows. That has to be a separate law passed because they can't, for some reason, work it into the budget. They can't line item them because it's laziness. It's laziness. That's why they can't hold Beshear accountable in the budget. And also, they don't want to set a precedent that if a Republican governor gets in there, then they have to do the same thing. But I say we should hold Republicans to the same level. Well, that's what we got time for today. I'll see you next week.